Have you ever wondered, why does it work that way? Or thought, how can we thrive with Medicare Advantage under these conditions? You're not alone. Jenn has wondered all those things and more. Every month, join Jenn Kerfoot and a motley crew of friends as they bring you candid conversations with industry pros, break down important updates, and share insider tips to boost star ratings. Whether you've been around since before Medicare had the advantage or are just starting out, there's always something new to learn. Welcome to Stars Unscripted.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, to an episode of Stars Unscripted. I'm your host, Jenn Kerfoot, and today I'm super excited because I'm joined with just two of my favorite people in the world, Nate and Reva. And today we are going to be breaking down Plan Preview 2 and all of the wondrous things that go with that and what maybe that signals for October this year for 2026 star ratings. So first, Nate, can you introduce yourself to the listeners if they don't know who you are already?
Sure. Glad to be here. I'm Nate Lucena. I'm the president and managing director at Rex Wallace Consulting.
And Reva.
Who doesn't know Nate?
I
My
know,
name
right?
is Reva Sheehan, Senior Vice President of Health Solutions at Duos. And this is my third week here, but I am no stranger to the Stars world. I've been on Stars teams in the past, and then in the last handful of years or so have supported many of them in an alternate role as well.
All right, well, let's jump in because there's a lot to talk about. All right, for the listeners who might be new to learning about the Star Ratings program or just new in general to the entire thing that is Medicare Advantage, can you explain the significance of Plan Preview 2 compared to Plan Preview 1? Reva.
Yeah, I'll take that one because that's easy for me, at least. But if you're new here or need a refresher, the difference between the two, Plan Preview 1 is typically in early August, and CMS is going to deliver via HPMS each contract's data. So that's preliminary data at the measure level, and that's it. You just get to see, hey, if I was tracking 80-something% for BCS and CMS says 80-something%, cool. If you have any discrepancies, of course, you're meant to raise those during that window. Plan Preview 2, however, comes along with that data, is now coupled with preliminary cut points at the measure level, domain level, stars, summary, etc. So you're going to get those cut points. So if I was tracking 80-something%, now that's going to translate to 4-star, 5-star at the measure level. So that's the biggest difference between the two, is you get to see what is CMS attributing that data, that rate to when it comes to cut points and actually measure performance. I will say, in case it's not stressed enough, I think they mentioned it multiple times in the memo. If you have any questions or discrepancies, concerns, anything, consternation station, call CMS, email that inbox. I've done it once before myself. I'm very glad that I did. So I would just, one bit of unsolicited advice there. If you have questions, that is what that inbox is for, and is open till 5 p.m. on the 16th, which I think is Tuesday next week. So right around the corner. But that's the main significance between the two.
So kind of in other words, like for most plans, this is the dress rehearsal before the final curtain goes up. And I know, Nate, you have been very, very busy this week. So thank you for
Yes.
joining us. And it's, for our listeners, this is a time of year that I remember, like, I think I fell asleep at the office one time, especially Plan Preview 1 and then also Plan Preview 2. I just lived at the office. I think I had a change of clothes and would shower at the gym at my office. So, like, what is really kind of the, I would say, big things that health plans are thinking about as they're looking at, based on what they saw in Plan Preview 1 to Plan Preview 2? What are the big things that they're trying to compare?
Yeah, I mean, so to Reva's point, we have the cut points now, and the cut points are barometer for where our plan sits within the entire distribution of Medicare Advantage plans in the country when it comes to quality performance for stars and on down the road for that quality bonus payment or some sort of rebate, right? So those additional dollars that you get that are based on the star performance. So what plans are thinking about right now, absolutely the accuracy of the data, also making sure that not just your rate is correct, but that CMS has correctly assigned that rate to its corresponding performance band. For the vast majority of the time they do that, but sometimes there's little glitches, right? And you need to go through and you need to check those things. I would say the main thing for Plan Preview 2 is sort of this confirmation of where you sit within the performance distribution. It's when you understand what your all this performance across all of these measures,
Mm.
what's it going to roll up to in terms of determining what your final star rating ends up being. And like I said, on down the road, whether or not you get the additional dollars from the rebate or the quality bonus payment. I mean, that's really what plans are doing when they're reviewing this and sort of getting that preview of what's going to come dollar wise, and then what's probably going to show up for consumers when they go to enroll for their Medicare Advantage plan for next year.
One of the things I think is interesting is this, or like this morning when I logged into my computer, an HPMS memo had come out yesterday. And there's a sentence in it that I just like to read out loud, which is, additionally, we remind all contracts that star ratings data shared prior to the release of final star ratings in October are preliminary and subject to change. And thus, plans and related entities should not release information on 2026 star ratings through any means until the finals have been published. I saw that, read that this morning, considering the week that I've had, and had to actually have like a nice laugh out loud moment, because I think for those listeners that aren't really deep into the sauce, there are so many changes that I have seen happen between Plan Preview 2 and what's finally released for the public to see in October. I know, Reva, in your career, you've experienced this. I don't know if you have any stories you want to share, or Nate, you want to share, just so the listeners can kind of get a feel of some changes that could occur.
Sure. So in my own personal instance, on Stars team many moons ago, it was during the plan preview period. I think it was the first year that the TMP hit Stars. So if anyone remembers the Timely Monitoring Project, it's not an audit, it's a project. And we got hit pretty hard.
Yes.
I have like PTSD on the TMP, but we got hit pretty hard. And then, so there was no, that was my first year. I think I'd only been on the Stars team for a few months. So I was like, TM who? But anyway, we had, kind of like this war room of like, what can we do? Is there anything that we can fix or challenge or change or whatever? Because the TMP, that ship had sailed, they calculated that appropriately. We did not auto forward, et cetera, et cetera. So we ended up finding two appeals cases, Part C cases, that had been forwarded to the IRE as service instead of payment. It's not the IRE's job to validate the accuracy of what you send to them. So we're quick on the phone with Maximus saying, hey, can we resubmit these? And they're like, sure, go for it, but we can't make any promises. So that's when I emailed the Stars, or not the plan preview desk. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, I don't want to do this. There's a whole bunch of people sitting in DC eating popcorn, laughing at my email right now, right? That's how I felt in the moment, thinking, like, there's no way, like, this is the silliest thing that I've ever asked for. So I spell out the cases. We had overnighted them back to Maximus to correct them to payment from service. And then they said, okay, well, we'll consider it, or we'll see, basically. They didn't say yes or no. And really, by all letters of the law, like anything after, I think at the time, April 30th of that previous year, that's done. Like that. So
it's gone.
We had a very, very long, sleepless plan preview 2 to final rates that year. And when the final rates came out, there was just a flutter of text messages between our Stars team of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So we had saved at the time what would have been a drop from 4.5 to 4 stars. So we saved that 4.5 stars, which is a big deal off of 2 cases. So you better believe we made those 2 cases our roadshow for the entire next year of all the other cross-functional teams that we worked with, of like, this is how important every single little thing that you do is. But yeah, when I tell that story, I still scratch my head and go, I don't know how or why they accepted that. But that was a change that we had
Don't
made.
question it, Reva.
No,
just take that.
There's got to be a statute of limitations on it now, right? They can't go back and take it back. But that's my point of saying, even if it seems trivial or out of reach, like, it's up to them to say, no, I'm not going to fix this, or I'm not going to change it. But that was my plan preview 2 story.
I don't have anything that good, but it does. I mean, we have several instances this year, and in a couple of prior years, I'll say, of plan preview 2 being the time where you figure out that you missed a threshold by like 1 care gap or 1 readmission or one appeal or what have you. So there are some tough pills to swallow, in addition to sometimes, having some pleasant
Hmm.
surprises because maybe the industry had a rough time and your
Yeah.
performance wasn't as bad as you thought it was.
I never get those pleasant surprises. I don't remember those. I think that
Come
like
on.
when never. Like, I think like this can come down to like phone calls. And I think it's important to think about like the
Yeah,
many,
for
many
sure.
lawsuits that we've seen. Like Humana lost their most recent appeal. And like things can come down to like phone calls, like one or two phone calls, especially like when you're looking at the cut points and how close you can be. If you can just get maybe two of the calls and where you're failing get like removed and then you go up a measure, and because of how everything triggers, because again, star ratings is a math problem, there's multiple
Right.
components to it, and I think it comes down to those one or two little things, those little tiny details that really require a lot of cross-functional awareness that it isn't just a phone call. This is something that represents not only a lot of money in terms of revenue and impacts your profitability for larger organizations, but what's more important, like the ability to fund like supplemental benefits, like because
Hmm.
that is what we use the QBP and also like that rebate, that Part C rebate dollars for. And so it has a big material impact on plans' abilities to grow. I just was on a call with someone. She's like, wait, but if members don't like you and they say they're not satisfied with the plan because you can't offer something, but what you can offer is based on, your performance and your star ratings, then how can you win? I'm like, great question. You have to just start being good at a lot of different things. It's not just one particular thing. So it's not just on the quality team or on the Part D team. It's like a real team sport, which is, I think, appropriate considering we're in football season, which is what I'll be doing this weekend
Oh
because I'm
gosh,
not going.
not the sports ball already.
Go, I know Nate's over here going, go sports. And I'm like, yes,
Go sport.
I had to explain to my girlfriend, all the days of college football. I'm like, you really get 2 days, which is like
I
maybe a
do like I
Tuesday and
do
a
like
Wednesday.
college. I do like college
But then we
football.
got pro ball
I'll
too.
get
So
on board with that. Nah.
it's
Um,
going. It's going to be fun.
yeah, you also have to start existing in multiple years at once. I think for all this, to make sense. Like to Reva's point, like we're looking at
Mhm.
pretty old data by this point, but you still have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb because one tiny thing, could make the difference. I kind of am thinking back years and years ago where I actually do think we had some sort of error in our QI assignment um,
Mhm.
at the plan that I used to work at for some of our contracts under the parent organization. So there are these little things buried sometimes in one of the spreadsheets, but maybe not another one, where you kind of have to dig down and make sure that even though that data is way back here and you're focused on, trying to focus on what you're doing now, and oh, by the way, you're preparing for enrollment and wondering what you're going to do with all these new members in the next year, you
Mhm.
still have to keep that data in mind and be really, really rigorous in terms of how you're looking at it and bringing people
Mhm.
together, the experts of that data, because it can't all just be, the one or two stars leaders that you might have focused on it, to come in and put their expert eyes on that data point and say, yes, this is accurate, and follow it all the way through to the overall star rating.
Yeah, most certainly. I think wanted to touch a little bit on the cut points. Generally, reactions from Nate and Reva. I got to know what you think. Did it meet your expect? It was like meh.
We weren't shocked, but that doesn't mean that nobody should be shocked across the industry.
Nate got that good crystal ball.
I it was yeah,
He got that good
his name
crystal ball.
his name is Angelo,
I know
by the
he's
way.
so good. Shout
So
out to
I mean,
Angelo.
shout out to Angelo.
Yay.
So we weren't really surprised. I mean, I think it's super interesting if you look to see all those cut points that were very clearly guardrailed, and then making sure that you're looking at. We're gonna do some deep cuts now. Looking at attachment K, so that you can
Mhm.
see the cut points without the guardrails, and that gives us a really good idea, right, of when
Mhm.
we're thinking about the guardrails and we're seeing measures where, like particularly the 2 and 3 star cut points are jumping up 5% this year. They jumped up 5% last year, and then you go and you
Mhm.
see that like maybe the actual 2 star cut point would have jumped 50 points. right? Tukey and
Mm,
Guardrails combined are going to
mm,
draw this out for us for a few
yeah.
more years. So just be prepared. If you're on the
Mm-mm.
lower end of that distribution,
Mm,
do twice as much as you think you need to do,
mhm,
because those cut points are going to continue jumping up 5%. If you get used to that and expect it because you've looked at all those data
mm.
elements, when something like this comes out, you're not really going to be that shocked, even though there's a lot of quote unquote red on the sheet in terms of cut points that got
Mhm.
harder.
Yeah, I think that's a good important call. I think, like, Reva, I know you and I talk a lot about, like, you know, gauging that crystal ball of like where are we hitting in terms of the cut points, because until we get plan preview 2, we might not all have that good crystal ball that is Angelo. Like, how, when you are at a plan and then also working with clients over the years, like, how do you get them in the right mentality of thinking like it's not just based on where you think kind of that cut point is? How do you keep, moving an organization to like it might get harder? You know what I mean?
Right. I think, now, and certainly my actual team Stars life was pre-pandemic. So we had a really weird
Mhm.
year or a couple years of disruption, right? But going
Mhm.
back pre-pandemic and where we are now, I think that we're
Mhm.
actually in a space where it's kind of like a true performance environment, right? Like I think things are leveling off. We've gotten back to, we don't have the same access disruption. So
Mhm.
kind of then to now thinking of, you have to define what success is for you, right? You have to define what's actionable, what's movable, what can I do within my organization, what resources do I have, how can I leverage my provider networks? Like everybody, yes, wants to. I mean, we would always say like, gosh, we want to be 5-star, and then the Stars team would sit back and cringe and be like, do we really want to? Because then the
Four and a half
expectations
pays the same. Four and a
the
half pays the same.
expectations change, right? And
Yeah.
we know it's hard to get there and even harder to stay there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is
I don't
that,
want to be 5 stars.
yes, everybody wants to be a high performing plan. But I think for some of those folks, it might be stuck in a 2 or 3 space at certain measures. You have to and articulate the big, I think, thing about Stars is if this and that, what about this and what about that, right? You have to have all these other scenarios planned, because you can track your own performance and then being able to articulate to your senior leadership team or the team that doesn't know attachment K, right? That, hey, this is not realistic. We would have had to have gotten X amount of more colonoscopies or whatever it might be, right? And these are the reasons, or this is what we've done, I guess is kind of where I'm getting is scenario A, B, C, and D, and then to be able to articulate that to the people that matter and help make those
Yeah.
decisions. I find that this is the time of year, and even in my solution provider life, working with Stars teams, when you start to say, hey, I was telling you it wasn't looking good, and turns out plan preview's correct, and it doesn't look as good as we
I done
want it to
told
be. And
you.
now, I know, but then the fun part comes, and they're like, okay, sure, fine. But then the fun part comes in October when you find out that all of your competitors in your market area or service area have actually increased, and it's even worse, right? So I think my other little nugget there is to say that's when your senior leadership team says, oh, well, what do you need? What do you need from us? How can we help you? And you're like, all of the things I asked for the last 2 years. But then have a plan, right? Have a plan for what is it that you need and want. And as unfortunate as it is, if a low performing situation happens or an underperform or under expectations, use it to your advantage, use it for leverage, get the things that you need, get the supports, the solution providers, the FTEs, the whatever it might be. That's kind of like your one chance to really shake the couch cushions, I guess.
Looking for those pennies.
Yeah.
Like, where are these pennies at? I think too is like a lot of times when I'm talking to like Star Ratings, they're like, I'm so frustrated because now my senior leader, our CEO, our CFO, my board is saying, what are you going to do about our star rating? And that ship is sailed. I remember telling a CEO, he's like, I want all our plans to be 4 stars for next year. I said, well, then like go find Doc Brown in that DeLorean, because if you wanted to have 4 stars, that was 2 years ago when your team was saying we need to really focus on HEDIS. And so I think like really being able to articulate as a leader how long that timeline is from like looking at it from bid to like when that QBP is applied and hits that payment year. Like you need to get in the way back with Mr. Peabody and start thinking about like where should have we been and then applying that. But I think even though we're in plan preview 2 right now and we're looking ahead to October, we're still in the year of our Lord, measurement
Mhm.
year 2025. Um,
Yep.
and so I'd love to hear from both of you, though, really, how do you even start to like advise, think, or for yourselves, having both been in a plan, myself included, of like, how can you balance all the pressure of what you know is coming while also staying focused on what still needs to be done? Because that's hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's just new information, right?
Yeah.
Plan Preview 2 is just new. Um, Maybe not so new if you've got
Yeah.
really good predictions, but
Yeah.
it's just more concrete information to build into your strategy. Um, if you have good projections, Q4 should not feel like a gigantic pivot after you get your star rating. It shouldn't. I totally understand that it does
Mhm.
sometimes, but just based on how the industry moves. But um, you just need to incorporate that and tweak what you're doing for the rest of the year,
Mhm.
because now you have a better idea of whether the industry is continuing to move along a similar trajectory to prior years, or if
Mhm.
something fundamentally has changed that is, maybe a black swan event, or like something that was
Mhm.
unexpected for the industry. And now
Mhm.
right? And that's what might cause you to pivot a strategy this late in the year, to try and, maybe mitigate
Mhm.
mitigate the impact of that in the current measurement period. But it's new information.
Reva, any suggestions on how to not cry in the supply closet?
Yeah, I think that, as I was preparing for this today, and maybe Nate, to your point, if you've got good projections, which I think is a must, whether you do them internally or you
Hmm.
Mhm.
outsource,
Yep.
plan preview period should be very much like a performance review. There should
Mhm.
be no surprises.
Mhm.
I'm not going to turn up to my annual review and my boss tells me, "Hey, Reva, you're really just not up to snuff." Like I already know. Then we've had conversations, we've
That would
addressed
never
things.
happen.
Do you know what I know?
So shocked.
But that's kind of what I was thinking of it as. Like it shouldn't be a surprise. The big surprises
Hmm.
might come when you don't know how your neighbor performed.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
think that's kind of a key piece there. And I'm always a fan of, folks a lot of times like to look at what didn't work or what's not working or the members that didn't
Mhm.
do the thing. There's typically a lot more members that did do the thing and things that worked. Spend time there, right? Instead of just
Mhm.
always at the stuff that seems to be that loud. Somebody referenced a tuba. Like you can't play a tuba quietly. Like so
I
those
can't play tuba
those
at all.
I know I can't even. Do you know what I mean though? When you look at the numerator non-compliance and my
Mhm.
problem children or whatever, they're loud. They are, but
Mhm.
there's fewer of them than everyone else. So my point is always to say, like, identify the things that are working, identify the provider groups that are overperforming or helping
Mhm.
you, or find your paths of least resistance and identify ways that you can then turn that into, support
Mhm.
those people that are your noisy, your loud problem children, if you will, instead of just saying they're
Yeah.
not doing it. Okay, well, what about the ones that are? What do we know there, and
Mhm.
how can we employ
Yeah.
that over here?
I love that idea of like looking at it like a performance review, because I think from like speaking to some executives are like, how could this happen? And I think it's like, one, how do you throughout the year, not just waiting until that plan preview 1, plan preview 2 to be like, hey, like this is something that is urgent. So I think it's incumbent on like all individuals that are accountable for star ratings to being driving that awareness throughout the year and where you are in that timeline, because you're also working like in multiple years, just like the risk adjustment team is working concurrently, prospectively, retroactively, and aligning everyone. Okay, when all of these timelines converge, what does that mean? And like you both have said, you got to plan for multiple different scenario types. And then to another thing you said, Reba, is like it's really like, when everything comes out in October and you see those trends of like, okay, you did not perform, but everyone around you did, for the teams that are doing the bid. And a lot of this is based on game theory, which is why, that big old kerfuffle around Tukey and everything like that, and them lawsuits, or some people got to redo their beds and others didn't, but that's another episode. It's being able to say, okay, we need to know internally how we are going to do. Like you can't predict what the market is doing, but you should be able as an internal organization to predict where you're feeling like if you have good network adequacy, if your members like you or don't like you. And I think waiting until when the house is on fire to start that service recovery process. I can't remember what you said to me the other day, Reva, when we were talking about CAP surveys, about how you reach back out to the member. You said something that
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
It's, I think a lot of off-cycle proxy stuff is great, right? You can learn a lot of really great things, but in most cases, it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity for service recovery. Let's say, hey, I fielded an off-cycle survey. It's 60, 90 days later that the plan is going to get that information. And for me, I think I likened it to like putting a toddler to sleep. It's like you're going to tiptoe back out of the room like I wasn't here.
That's what it was.
You're not going to call Reva and say, hey, you told me 90 days ago that you had a bad experience. Because hopefully something else better has happened, and you do not want to remind Reva that she had a bad experience 90 days ago, right? But so I think that's kind of what that is. It's that like tiptoe, like out of the room, because you don't have the ability to do that kind of near real-time service recovery in some of those kind of standard or traditional means.
Like act when it's needed. I say, like, my favorite thing is appeals and grievances. My best friend, she loves her some appeals and grievances, which is why I hired her at the plan. I'm like, you love this. I hate this. I want someone who loves appeals and grievances. But it's just like really getting into your data and what you're hearing from your call center, or looking at your organizational determinations as a leading indicator. As were your benefits clear to your members? Is your network truly have real network adequacy, and not waiting until, you're seeing, your CAPS results and being like, oh, they don't like us. I don't know who got the survey. We can't answer that question. Like, you have some data to lean on. And so, like, Nate and Reva, another thing I think that the listeners would really love is, if I'm a health plan looking at my plan preview 2 results, I have looked under the cushions, I've looked in my backpacks and all the drawers for like that, maybe like quarter of a point, and I could not find it by hook or by crook. What do you tell them right now? What is your kind of words of wisdom?
Mean?
If they didn't get the rating that they wanted, what is your kind of words of wisdom of what's next?
Start working out your muscles. I agree with Reva. Like, you do have to figure out like what did work, even if you missed it. I would say honing in, we don't have the public data set yet, so this will be a much more interesting or complete conversation, right, if we have it again after that public data set gets released. But at least with the cut points, taking a look strategically to see, okay, where do I seem to be moving in the opposite direction of the industry versus where am I keeping pace with the industry versus where am I outpacing the industry? And really just bucket out your capacity to make sure that you're tending to those 3 groups of measures appropriately. And that's going to look different depending on what your capacity bucket looks like, right? Depending on what your org structure is, depending on how much support you have from your senior leadership team. One other thing, you should always have your business cases ready. Again, none of this should be a huge surprise. Maybe there's some cut points that shifted more than you thought or less than you thought. So maybe there are some little surprises there, but wholesale shouldn't be a ton of surprises. If you asked for something 10 months ago and you didn't get it, and this thing came to pass that is negative for your organization, those business cases are likely still relevant, right? So package them back up and say, here's what your inaction got us. Also, mandatory re-education for the folks that don't have to do this craziness every day. And so when the stars come out, it is a shock for them, right? If there was a drop, doesn't matter if you said it to them 10 times, it hadn't happened yet, so it wasn't real. So make sure that in your tool belt, you understand how your executives or how your purse string holders accept information, right? Do the work to understand how to communicate in the way you need to communicate effectively so that they can hear you, and take that opportunity then to do not just the business cases, but as efficiently as possible, the re-education that you need to do. So that maybe they can make a more informed or more complete decision this time than they did the last time, because you're kind of connecting the dots. I view what the stars leader needs to be doing right now, kind of all the time, but right now, is be the connector of dots for your organization. Help them understand holistically how all this stuff we're talking about impacting the members and the providers is now measured, and now we have the measurement. And that should be guiding our behavior, both with our dollars, where we're putting our FTEs, all that jazz.
I love that. Reva, words of encouragement?
I
Fun
think you
facts?
have to have an answer for every question. What are we doing for Haas? This is what we're doing. This is how we're measuring it. This is how we're determining success, or whatever that might be, right? Because they're going to ask at any point in time throughout the year, right? So have an answer, have a plan for every single measure set, for every initiative of what is it we're doing, why are we doing it, how are we measuring it. I think that's really important when you have to answer some of the questions to some of the leadership that doesn't know this stuff, that doesn't live and breathe and lose sleep the first week of August and September every year, like the Stars teams do. I think that's key. And, we used to say, if it touches senior markets, it's my business as a Stars person. So like, you may not necessarily get to decide what goes in the bid and how everything works in the bid, but you better have a seat at that table. You better be informed. You better know what vendors you're using to send out ID cards, and did they put a funny sticker on it? That's a story for another day. You have to be everywhere. You have to embed yourself everywhere. And then also be able to articulate the why am I here. We were able to, back in my Stars days, we did a Stars roadshow that we'd go to each department that impacted Stars. My favorite one was the medical directors, when I got to tell them about those 2 appeals cases and why you need to do these things on time over the weekend, whether you're at a sports ball game or not, right? This is why it matters. But we were able to get in on day 1 new hire, or week 1 new hire onboarding training. So there was a 2 or 3 day classroom style that would happen regardless of the role, from call center entry level to seniors. Like, this was we're all going to do the onboarding stuff together. And we got 30 minutes on that every month, or every however often that they did it. And we said, this is what Stars is. This is why it's important. And that onboarding was specific to Medicare, I believe, or at least that session was. So we got to get in front of those people on day 1 at that health plan and say, this is why this is important. And everybody here, if I say, if it touches senior markets, it's my business. If you touch senior markets, Stars is your business. So I think that's kind of like, it's a free pass to like just insert yourself into every room, every conversation, right? And then I think it's important too, kind of to have, like I said, to have that plan or document. These are the things that we did. This is how we've educated and informed and measured the level of your understanding. Like, do you know how this works? Or who's responsible for it? It's like, I always say, like, Stars is probably like the most convoluted racy chart. Are we responsible? Are we accountable? A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure. Sometimes it depends on what October turns out, right?
Yep.
If October is good, there people are like,
I got all the letters.
Great job, isn't it great?
The R
And if it's not, then it's all your job.
Is all your job.
I was just the eye on that racy chart, so I think it's the last bit of that from.
This makes me think. This makes me think too. Like, this is the time of year, just because maybe more often than not, we've got these dumb things in our ears when we're trying to make dinner because things are still happening. I don't know about you all, but this is the time of year when my family, because we're throwing around a lot of acronyms, and everything's got to get done fast, and my household is like, what do you do?
Oh my God. I get asked that all the time.
What the hell do you do for a living? And like, the rest of the year, they kind of think they have it figured out.
I heard cats.
But these particular times in the year, this is one of them where it's just, I'm doing Stars all throughout the house, and my family's just like, I really don't get it. I had another thought though, thinking through like the plan preview 2 period specifically. It's not infrequently, even at a plan that has pretty good predictions, that there's maybe 1 or 2 September surprises. Use the opportunity to figure out where your understanding of your performance level and where you might have been within the industry broke down, and why. It's not, that part is not necessarily a blame game, right? From a rate perspective, you're going to see that in plan preview 1, but from a context of the industry perspective, sit down with people and say, okay, we were pretty much spot on in all these areas. But here's where our model broke down a little bit, and do some process improvement. You don't just need to do process improvement on your measures and your initiatives. You need to break down the processes that you have for understanding what your performance is at any given time. Where did that break down? Do some remediation there. And then
Mhm.
if your process is painful during plan preview 2, such that
Mhm.
people are caught flat-footed, they can't turn things around in time, sit with your teams and do that work too,
Mhm.
right? Improve the culture so that the next year, even regardless of
Mhm.
what the results are, you at least have a faster path to getting there and understanding whether they're right or not.
And I think like that to like, make sure that there's so many vendors in this industry. You have like your HEDIS auditor. You also have your HEDIS engine. You have multiple entities that all converge. And it's a good time to step back and say, are the people that we are partnered with, are they also equally as informed? Because when you partner with
Mhm.
someone, you're like, I'm expecting that if not more than me. And if that's not the case, maybe this is a good time to start thinking about how you surround yourself with different types of partners. And then I think for executive leaders, I, and this is just Jen's hot take, I think that it is, I don't use the word unfair, but like your star ratings team is like kind of the cat herders, like Teresa, like where that racy gets really messy. And so for executive leaders, like align incentives across the board for the outcome. So looking at like
Mhm.
performance bonuses, it's not just the star ratings team gets their performance bonus on did we perform and move our star rating or achieve what goal we were hoping to. It should be everyone that touches something that ends up being in that output, I think is really critically important. And I love what you said, Nate, about like doing the re-education, because not only do measures change, but the methodology has changed over the years. Or maybe, for example, I was talking to our lovely friend Catherine Iskrant. Shout out to Catherine Iskrant.
Shout
She's
out,
not
Catherine.
if she's not your auditor, get her as your auditor. Love that
Yep.
woman. But I was telling her the other day about, you have your mandatory exclusions, and then there's those supplemental exclusions that could be like used for 2025. And there's a plan that I was talking to, they're like, we have to use all of the supplemental exclusions. And I'm like, the answer's in the name. They supplemental. You throwing out members who are numerator positive. They're like, but it's exclusion. I said, but there are mandatory and supplement. And so we were talking about that. And even just kind of as things change, and it used to be like with the ICD 10s, I think there was like 100 and some odd for advanced frailty. But there's now like, I think it was like 1,200, 1,400 for LOINC codes. And so like
Mhm.
looking at all of the levers you can pull on when it comes to that really technical thing that is the star ratings program, it cannot be said enough. And I'll say it again for the folks in the back. But wrapping up, I really appreciate both of you coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and some of your battle scars. But I gotta ask it. Any predictions for how's October's gonna look?
I think
Just
Nate
gut,
has a
Uh,
like just
crystal
like
ball.
just
I've
yeah,
got like a
Nate.
magic 8 ball from the mall, and it's like
And I got like
all
one of those like
I
little
2022.
like things that you make that fold, like a yes or no thing.
I've been getting this question a lot, and I realize
Because we
CMS
know you
put out
have the
that
good crystal ball.
put out, I realize CMS put out that memo, but wasn't it United that released updated guidance about 78%
I did
for
not say that.
They
26?
did.
I didn't
But
Well,
the
we
day
say
didn't have
before
to
that.
that
say it. It
memo,
was in
We
the
all know.
news. So I have been thinking about that. That's been haunting me as I stay
mm,
awake, looking at the cut points. Of
We have issues.
we do have issues. We've healthcare's had a rough year for many many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
United has been in the news a lot, and there was a lot of chatter, both in the markets and then also just in the star ratings about what will this publicity, the folks on the internet bringing up United's name when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
prior authorization and things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature, what will that do to the member experience?
Mm-hmm.
And because they're such a big player with so many contracts, what does that do to the entire distribution of industry performance? Um,
Oh.
so we were all thinking that's a thing we were thinking about, right?
Mm.
All these hundreds of thousands of members that may now be learning that there's market exits and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've been going through this for a couple of years now, and thinking through how that might be impacting the member experience. Would invite
Mm-hmm.
everybody to go look at what happened in the CAPS results.
There goes
Our
my
dear,
weekend
our
plans. I was just
dear
gonna watch football.
our dear clustering methodology, if you go and you subtract, right, 25 from 26, you're going to get a lot of cells that say 0. And we know that CAPS doesn't move around that much. There's a few of them that moved around a point, but a lot of them didn't move around at all. And so when I'm thinking through what 26 could look like from an industry distribution standpoint, I don't necessarily think that we're going to have a bunch of enormous air shots this season. That's my hot take. I'm not seeing it. I'm not saying nobody's going to move around in surprising ways. I'm talking industry as a whole. What I'm seeing in these cut points is a trudging along of the patterns that we've seen. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Any predictions, Reva? With the magic 8 ball?
Maybe not predictions. I have lots of things that, like, I remember when I first moved away from the health plan to the solution provider side, and I was like, I felt like crippled without having access to all of that data. Like, I'm so used, what do I do now, right? So this is a time of year where I start having, or, formulating, Jen, we've talked about some of them, a lot of questions like, ooh, I can't wait until this comes out because I want to compare this with that and see, what does it say? Did it improve? Can we make any, it's probably hard to be causation, but correlations between certain things. I'm not going to say any of them here because I think we can use that for a later date, but I got some ideas. Ooh. But I think that it's interesting.
Part 2.
When we look at, I don't want to keep going like pre-pandemic, but like back in my early Stars days, 10 plans got 5-star, and then it jumped up to 70 something. That was like, what was, somebody called it like the 1-year free subscription to like Star Ratings. That was it. It's done, right? That. So we're back to more of a normal space, but I think that we're seeing like a bigger push because there are probably going to be fewer 4-star plans this year, or at least a similar amount. I don't think that we'll see a big jump there, but I wonder if there's just a lot of concentration in this middle performance space. Those guys are going to eventually, not that they necessarily fight amongst each other, but if you think of them in like cut points and numbers and measurements on that matrix, they're going to start, someone's going to have to break out. There's going to have to be some other shifts, right? And we look at clustering methodology. Are those clusters closer to the middle?
Yep.
I don't think that the outbounds are really outliers, but I think that's what'll be interesting to look at and see as we look at overall summary scores kind of getting squished to the middle. What does that mean at the actual measure level as well? And then what can you do from there to kind of break out of that and get back up into the 4.5 range?
Or CMS changes everything and we get rid of the administrative measures. And I am going to leave us at that for part 2. I know you'd appreciate that, Nate.
Come on.
I know, right? But thank you, everyone, so much for listening. If you are looking at Plan Preview 2 and you're feeling really great, keep feeling great. And remember, congrats, but remember, no one likes people that gloat. And if you're not feeling super great about it, bag wine. I have a friends at a wine party, get some pizza, and brush yourself off. And know there's still a lot of football left to play. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Reva.
Thank you.
Bye.
As a Medicare Stars professional, you're on a mission to boost your plan's ratings. But complex data and endless metrics make it more than challenging. Enter Stars Monitor by Hyperlift, your guide to improved performance. Our dashboards pinpoint your most impactful opportunities. By focusing on what truly matters, you'll avoid the pitfall of missed targets and achieve the goal of steady improvement. Take the first step towards your Stars success story. Email results@hyperlift.com for a free demo. Stars Monitor by Hyperlift, providing speed to clarity.